Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Tonight, we are going to be speaking about farm planning or crop planning. It's a very appropriate time of the year. My name is Keto. I work for Keep Growing Detroit. I coordinate our education programming and special projects, helping out with infrastructure at people's sites. Wear several different hats, but today I'm definitely helping with the education, facilitating this conversation with you all, and one of our awesome farmers from the KGD farm, Miss Rosebud Schneider. Rosebud has worked at a number of farms and gardens in Detroit and in the Michigan community for several years now. Most recently, and I'll have to ask Rosebud to remind me of the name, but she was up at a Native American farm up near the tip. Rosebud, what's it called? The farm?
Ziba Mijuan.
Ziba Mijuan farm.
Yep.
So if you could maybe just talk a little bit about your experience, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the presentation. So with that, if we could give Miss Rosebud a warm welcome, a warm virtual welcome, and we'll jump into the presentation.
Yay. Cool. Thanks, Keto, for having me here. Hello, good evening to you all. My name is Rosebud. I grew up in Southwest Detroit, lifelong Detroiter in many ways. I've been growing and pretty immersed in urban ag for the last 10 to 15 years. And then most recently, I was living up north. I was the market manager at Ziba Mijuan Farm, which is the Little Traverse Bay Band's tribal farm there, located like 10 minutes south of Mackinac City. So I got a lot of experience there, but I'm very, very glad to be back home in Detroit and, with my KGD peeps. I was on the board for a term back in 2018. So I'm really familiar with the community and with all the great things that are happening at KGD. So I'm really grateful and really honored to be a part of the team and to be with you all this evening talking about farm planning. Now's the time. I'm sure most of you are thinking about what went well last year, what you want to do better, what you want to change, what you want to keep. And really the objective this evening is to help you get prepared for your growing season by showing you what works for us. We know that, every grower and your space is different and unique, and we want to be able to continue to help build capacity within you to be able to provide for yourself in the best way, whatever that looks like. So I'm just going to jump right into it unless anybody has any questions. This first slide, they passed on the slideshow that they used from last year, and I decided to keep this one. I kept quite a bit, but I'm going to add my own spin to everything. But I really like this picture. This is this is somebody's map of their garden or their farm. They use Legos. I think that's super adorable. And really cool way to to build your map. So take a look at that. We'll talk lots about maps of your garden a little ways down. So, all right. Okay. So when we're talking about farm planning, we wanna think about what are the rewards. Why planning? Why do we need to do this? If you're growing, maybe you want to earn a living. Maybe you're growing for, just to have food and, food for your family. But the point of planning is, to have better time management, make more productive use of your time, reduce the stress in your life, and, just be consistent with what you're doing. And, planning helps set the tone for everything. And, now is like I said, now is the time to do that. All right. These notes are getting in my way. All right. So when we're planning, like I said, planning in the winter, grow in the warm season. You know, you want to make the most productive use of your land. You really want to enjoy your life. I think all of us can that are here, you know, really care about the land and care about our lives and, you know, love what we're doing. But sometimes, you know, farming is not sometimes, all the time. Farming is not easy. It's a lot. I mean, you can spend, you know, your entire day, your entire week just immersed in, you know, all the things that go into farming, especially if you're farming, you know, for CSA or for markets or to make your living. It really, you know, it can consume your life. But if you're planning, hopefully you'll be able to like pace yourself and also enjoy your life and enjoy all the other good things. You know, reduce your stress and confusion. You know, every year, you know, you become a better farmer. You learn from your mistakes. Not everybody has the the perfect recipe like out the gates. And if they think they do, they're lying to you. I'm just gonna laugh at my own jokes. It's okay. It's fine.
Well, can we pause for 1 second? So
Yeah.
almost everybody, so folks were saying that they couldn't see your screen. So if you're on
Oh no.
it should be fine. I think most everybody's saying that they can. If you're on a phone, you might need to swipe like on the app or however it's set up. You might need to swipe left or right to get to the screen sharing part. I've actually never done Zoom on a phone, so I'm not 100% sure, but I know that we, you know, we are sharing a screen. It seems like it's working for most folks. So, try. Well, we are recording, so, you know, at the very least, but if you are on a phone, I think that's the only kind of sticking point, and you might have to play with the settings or swipe left or right. Okay, Renee is saying she's on her phone and can see. So, that's about all I can offer at this point. Unfortunately, we just kind of got to keep going. Hopefully you can figure it out, y'all. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So you know, want to be keep learning from learning from season to season, improve your skills, improve yourself, and you know, you want to invest in your future. Planning gets easier every year, especially you know if you're not changing what's broken, not broken. Um, you know, find what works for you. All right. So you know, seasons are cyclical. Everything is cyclical. Um, did you have something, Keto?
Oh, I just looked like you skipped a slide. Did you? I don't know if you did that on purpose.
No, I did that one earlier.
Okay.
Those are
Okay.
kind of redundant.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, farming and planning is cyclical. Um, we are at the stage now where we're reviewing, we are um, reviewing our notes, we're setting our goals. You know, when we move into thinking about where, if we are going to sell our produce, where are we going to sell that to? What is that going to look like? Then we think about our crop mix. What are we going to grow? How much do we want to grow? When are we growing it? When are we starting our seeds? When are we direct seeding? When are we, when do we need to harvest? How much do we need to harvest? And that moves into, you know, a planting plan and a transplant plan. And then, you know, think about mapping out, you know, your area if you haven't done that. You know, think about adding in, allow for experiments. If you want to grow something new one year, think about how that's going to fit in, and what makes the most sense for you. And then you go back and review, and what are you missing? What haven't you thought of? And then that moves into your record keeping plan. And that brings you right back to where we started. So we're going to break this down just a little bit more. Does anybody have any questions before I move forward?
Yeah. How's everybody doing? Questions thus far? Okay, great.
So, if your brain doesn't work in a cyclical way, we do have steps for us to follow. And those are pretty much what I just went through. But we're going to go and break these down a little bit more. So between steps 1 and 3, now is the time that we are reviewing our notes and setting our goals, thinking about market outlets, thinking about your crops. You really want to, these are the times that you really reflect on what worked well. That's something that we did this year at the farm ourselves. All of us sat down, the whole crew, and we talked about what worked, what didn't work. And these are the times to make changes, like in your crop planning. Think about what crops didn't work really well, what you didn't sell very, very much of, what was in higher demand. And even down to like this, the smallest little details. Like I think we changed the sizes of our rows because it was really uncomfortable for us to walk through the pathways. We made them a little too small. So that's something that we learned from. And we set that out, added that to the plan at the end of the year, and adjusted what we were doing. So that usually happens, I would say, depending on what the end of your season looks like. That happens anywhere from November until now. And thinking ahead, what we want to do better next year. Any questions about that?
Yeah, just I'm wondering, Rosebud, are you gonna if maybe now's the time or maybe later, but just like thoughts, anything like when you're talking about market outlets, could you elaborate on what some of the market outlet options, at least locally, and what
Sure.
and as we go on, maybe we could just reference like how we would think about those in planning purposes.
Yeah. So, if you are a GRP member and you have a market garden and you're a GID grower, we have a few different options and outlets for you. We have our farm stand at Eastern Market, we have our CSA shares, and we have our online store that are all, GID growers are all able to tap into those markets. In the city and throughout, there's a lot of other opportunities to get out there and get your produce sold. There's a lot of restaurants, a lot of wholesalers looking, chefs looking to buy wholesale. That's a really great thing to think about if you want to tap into that kind of market. CSAs are always a really good, thing to think about and add into your plan. That kind of helps, offset some of the costs early in the year if you're doing CSAs. There are a number of other markets happening in the city, which I think is really great. I don't have a whole list of that right now, but I think all of us on this call are probably a little versed in where other markets are.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So, steps 4 and 5, we talk about determining your harvest amounts and your harvest schedule. I found this little picture. This is a picture of my son some years ago. We were going through all of our seed packets and thinking about what we wanted to grow that year. And that's something that you can add into your routine. And I wanted to bring up this planting chart to show you all. Okay. So I can't see everybody, but if you are not familiar with Johnny's seeds, they are a really great resource. They not only do you get a great catalog, a million times through the year. They have really great resources. And this is something that we pulled from their website directly. And this is just a list, a chart of their what a transplanted vegetable crop plan can look like. If you can see it, I'll focus in on the beets. So Johnny's offers a packet of beet seeds, 260 seeds in a packet. They break it down from days from sowing to transplant, so 35 to 42 days. So that's something to think about when you are building your harvest plan. Days from transplanting to mature crops, 35 to 45 days. And then your average yield per 100 feet is 65 pounds. So depending on how long your row is, or your area.
Now I can see it.
You can see it now? Okay, great. Yeah, so that is just, one small example of what a planting plan can look like. Obviously, these numbers are really broad, and then you'll have to, think about what that looks like in the space that you're working in. All right. Oops.
I just want to add.
Go ahead.
Just add to that the yields that you're for working backwards from yields, there are yields are just a guesstimation or approximation. So it's just a starting point. The trial and error is going to really tell you how much you can grow on a particular area, but those are a really great starting point to work backwards from.
Yeah. Okay, another really great tool. They do have a target harvest date calendar on Johnny's. I am not going to click on this, but this is just a resource for you all. Hito, can you drop that in the chat, that link?
Yes, kind of.
Okay.
Let me go over to your slides from the other angle and do that. Yeah.
But this is another really, really great tool. And if you haven't gone to the Johnny's website, I really highly recommend that you do that. Especially following this link, it'll take you to a whole honeypot full of stuff. Do you
want to spend a minute there? Or do you want to click on it and take a look, or?
Okay, so this is what this looks like. Well, the seed quantity calculator. This one is pretty easy to use. We're in the US, so this is our measurement. Let's see, we want to do carrots. And we're directly sowing carrots. Everybody knows what that means, right? Chime in if you don't. And then let's say we have 100 feet row that we wanted to grow carrots. This is going to give us how many numbers of seeds we need. And this is based on this number. This number of seeds is based per foot. So 3,000 seeds. Does that make sense to everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
So can we just spend one more time on that page? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Sorry.
I think these are useful tools.
Yeah.
So the second one is if you are trying to figure out how much that's based on area. The first row is based on row feet, and then if there's another option for including your seed spacing, your plant spacing, that's also going to be helpful in terms of some of the calculations.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Good.
I mean, I think what we're starting to get into here is don't get overwhelmed, but there's a lot of kind of math and calculations to getting to the bottom line. If you're like, you want this much yield, you want to be harvesting so many carrots in the middle of May, you got to plant so many by this time. And all these kind of calculators help you get to that final endpoint.
Mm-hmm. I want to show chart here. So this is another chart, kind of similar to what I showed earlier. A breakdown of the different transplanted crops. These are specifically transplants that we're looking at, not directly seeded. And then it just breaks it down again. Any questions?
Yeah, there's a comment here.
Okay.
It's Zacunia, or is it TC, I think. With that soil matters with that chart. I'm not sure what you're saying there. Are you saying like, depending on how good your soil is?
Yes, I apologize for speaking over the mic, but most important that, I use this chart itself, and if you have a sandy loam, or if you have soil content that is less soil, less sand, this chart, it does matter depending on what soil you have, depending on what plants you want to have. That way you get your accurate yield count. So you have to take accountability of the drainage of the soil and the sandy loam. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. No, actually, it's a great point. Yes, absolutely. That's kind of echoing what I was trying to say earlier. It was like, these are intended to be kind of a starting point to, like, if you're getting, you're doing it for the first time with that particular crop, it's a frame of reference. And, the quality of your soil, access to, how much how frequently you're watering, if you're using different kinds of fertility. Parker's talking about compost, the nutrition in the soil. There's a number of factors that contribute to how well the yield will be. But it's a baseline to how start. And so when that's where your record keeping, if we're going back, referencing that cycle we were talking about earlier, is keeping records all along, to have, to say, okay, Johnny's told me I was going to get 100 pounds off of this 50-foot row, but I only got 75. So I know that my soil in its current condition at least can do 75, and I'll plan based on that. And then I'm going to add more fertility and try and boost that anyways. But, so you start to play games with those numbers, and you're kind of making educated guesses is the ultimate, and a lot of it comes with experience.
Yeah, good point. Good additions. Thank you. Soil is not something that I'm really going to cover today, but
yeah,
that should be part of your plan too, is soil amendment.
Right there. And so just to address it briefly, thinking about doing a soil test will help you get a general sense of the baseline of where your soil is at currently, and then amending. We definitely will be having more sessions as the season goes on that are addressing more directly questions around soil and addressing soil fertility. So stay tuned.
So I'm going to move on. All right. And feedback from last year's crop planning session, it was shared with me that we should take some time to talk about reading a seed packet. If you're way beyond this, just chime in and share your expertise. But it's good to know, it's good to understand, reading your seed packet. I mean, that's a really great resource. It's going to tell you everything you need to know. This one is butternut squash. So it's, best planted when the soil warms up to, to around 70 degrees. I usually don't start planting my When I do my Three Sisters garden, I usually don't start planting my my squash until June, July. So that's just how I operate. Spacing for your butternut squash. This one tells you, you know, sow 2 seeds every 18 inches, a 1/2 inch deep, and then 1 plant every 18 inches. And then your DTM, or your days to maturity, is 105 days. So that's, you know, that's all information that you can plug into your harvesting plan. And this, you know, this is a other really good example of, you know, this is seeds that are coming directly from us, from the Garden Resource Program. And this here on the right, it says these seeds should be planted directly in the ground and do not need to be started indoors. So that's another really important piece that you'll find on your seed packet. And we have another one. Anyone tell me the difference between the tomato, like planting tomatoes and planting the squash in the chat, or just shout it out?
Spacing.
Maturity date is much quicker.
Yeah, so the squash was direct sowed. So that means that you planted those seeds directly in the soil. They usually planted directly in the soil, or are they planted before? I know somebody knows, you're just not answering.
The question again?
So I just was asking the difference between seeding the tomatoes and seeding the squash, if there was a difference, or can they both be seeded the same way?
No, for me, they can't be planted the same way, because you don't want to put the spacing has to be separated to keep it away from fungus and disease, so that way it has a good airflow and not being killed compared to being flat on the ground, because tomatoes have a different dynamic of growing structure in the ground compared to squash. So squash being in a hill with 2 seeds compared to a tomato seed, you can get away with 2 to 3, but after they start to sprout and emerge, after they germinate, you want to separate and put those in a further location. That's just my opinion.
Great. It's a good opinion. Yeah, so the difference with this tomatoes and the squash that we have here, these tomatoes, this packet says to start seeds indoors 6 to 8 weeks before the last spring frost, and transplant in late spring after the nights have warmed. So this seed packet has a lot of information on here. It breaks everything down, your seed depth and your plant space and row space, when it sprouts, when it matures, and your seed count in this packet. And yeah, a really good point. You know, the tomatoes and squash, they grow very differently. I think that's always one of the one of the big questions that I've gotten from, you know, just home gardeners. Well, I have a raised bed, I'm going to just put everything in there, and then, you know, I put tomatoes and squash in there, and my squash choked out my tomatoes. What did I do wrong? So these, you know, these are things to think about if you haven't thought about that already. Not all seeds are created equal. All right. Any thoughts, questions on this, on reading a seed packet?
Even though it's not on there, you might want to, if you don't mind, talk to them about companion planting, so that way different type of bugs attract to certain type of vegetables and fruit, so that way it won't be a pest problem, if that's okay.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Nope, that is a very good point. All right. All right, so we talked a little bit about tools, just different ways to keep track of what's going on. There are a lot of things out there. If you haven't done any research yet, you know, we we use our, spreadsheets. That's pretty much what we use on the farm there. I know some people like to keep like handwritten logs. That's this pictured here. That's something Molly really likes to do, is keep a notebook on her and keep track of that. Some people aren't, too super technologically savvy, so paper and pen goes a long way for them. But down on this bottom of the slide shows a couple different examples of web-based tools and spreadsheets that we use. But the spreadsheet works really well for us. Any questions, or does anybody have any specific like web-based tool that you use that you found that really works for you? I mean, and the point is to use something that works, that you like, that is user-friendly, and that gives you the information that you need and helps you kind of make things easier for yourself, really. So that's something to be aware of when you're researching tools to use. Like I said, we use spreadsheets. We live in spreadsheets all the time, right, Keto?
Oh, yeah.
We will have some resources at the end of these slides for yourself to use. During the growing season, you can follow printed sheets if that's a guide, especially if you're building these plans for yourself, but you are going to have another grower or a farm helper out there, having resources for them to look back on, or having a big whiteboard with your your plan for the season. That's always really helpful. Excel formulas, it's another really good thing to think about when using spreadsheets and Excel specifically, is that they'll do the calculations for you. So if you're like me and don't want to hurt your brain doing math, Excel works. It's really quickly sorted out. It's literally in your palm. If you have a phone to access that, that's something really easy, or an iPad. And then, oops. Oh God. Okay. I wanted to take a moment and share our farm planting plan and talk a little bit and give you a little bit more context of what goes on. All right.
Will you start with the map?
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So if you all can picture the KGD farm, we have 7 fields. All right. Oh. Okay. I'm trying to get it smaller so you can... Okay.
Maybe
a
do
little
50.
bit smaller.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, my computer is very slow right now. All right. That's a little bit better. Okay. So if you can envision what the farm looks like.
So at the bottom here is the would be street side.
Yep.
Then these I don't know what the...
So these are our raised beds here. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, don't ignore the stuff at the very bottom, right? All along. Yeah, just cut that out.
There we go, right there.
Right. So these like
Yep.
little boxes right. Can you put, yeah,
Yep.
run your arrow.
Yep,
Those are
so-
the raised beds at the front of the farm.
Yep. This is our the fence line here. This is where you'll walk in, where that little fence opening that we've got there. This is where our root crops live. We've got usually put our carrots and beets in there and rotate those through the season. We also have really great perennial border here. Our bees live over here in this little area. So
And the
we
greenhouse is over to the left.
Yep. So we have seven fields.
And those are, I'm sorry, can I just elaborate on that for a second?
Yeah,
So
yeah. Mm-hmm.
we just are like, when we say field, our whole farm is in some people's minds, like if we go out to the sticks and go to a farm, our whole farm would be one field. We broke our whole farm up into sections that we call fields, just to, give a little bit more clear.
Yep. So broke down into seven different fields, with about 10 rows in each of those, depending on which field you're standing in. Some rows are longer than others. I want to say they're about 100 feet, especially particularly in field 1. This is the DeQuinder cut here on the right hand side and then behind us. But yeah, that's basically what our map looks like. I wish I could make this a little smaller. Okay. So that's one way that your map can look like. I am gonna move on to the planting overview. Let me make this bigger. So I'm going to talk about, oops, I'll just focus on the greenhouse.
Maybe do fields, just because the
That's where we're at.
will be a little bit more,
Makes sense.
people want to reference the.
Yep. So last year, I'm just gonna stay in field 1. Last year we, didn't start really anything. If you guys look on the top, everything is listed by the dates. And then other, important things to know, like the online store starts, the first Saturday market starts, our first CSA. So these are all things that we need to, keep in mind and stay on track for. So we want to be able to have, produce to take to these different outlets. So in March last year, we started off in field 1 by planting turnips and radishes. And if you see in row 1 and row 3, we put in turnips and radishes in week 11. And then we went back a week later and put in another succession of turnips and radishes. If you've grown turnips and radishes, you know that their day to maturity is pretty short. And it's a one-time harvest and then the crop is done. So if you want to continue to have radishes and turnips or, things like that, you want to stay with a succession plan. Every week, every 2 weeks, you want to keep adding seeds on. But for this field, we had turnips and radishes in there until mid-May. And then we turned the field over and added okra, and field 1 turned into our squash patch. And it stayed that way all the way until November. So that was the cycle for field 1. Do you have any questions?
I just want to point out that so your Rosebud was referencing in the fields that most of them are around 10 rows. So each one of those rows is referenced on the left-hand side here. So for each one of those rows, you know, is a visual of you know, of the crop at that, you know, at a particular time. So basically vertically is the time of the year, horizontally is where is the space, is the location that that thing would be growing at that time of the year. So
So field, go ahead.
I was just going to say field 6 has got a lot more going on.
Yeah. Yeah, so field 6, if we want to look at that. And that was, yeah, that one had a lot of turnover. You know, we started in April, end of March, early April, and added turnips and radishes, beets and carrots. And if you can see in rows, like these guys here, we did a succession planting of beets and carrots every week. So we added another row in as the weeks went by. And then you know, it was a pretty hefty turnover. We ended up seeing 2 plantings of beets and 2 plantings of carrots. And then once those were harvested, they turned into our garlic bed.
Okay,
in
there's
November.
Right, great.
What was the question?
So there's a question here. Do you schedule in the time to prepare the bed for the next crop on the spreadsheet?
Yeah. I want to say that I don't know if it's on our spreadsheet actually, but when our farm manager Akello is making our weekly like task list, we go back, we reference this a lot, because we know from week to week everything is broke down by week. So we know by you know, week 10, week 11, we need to start prepping because those, you know, these different seeds need to go into the ground. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, I think that, yeah, she said yes, or they said yes. Thank you.
Cool. Hi, Merle.
Right. So can you go back to that for a second? I had a thought while you were talking and I wanted to so we're talking about our 1.5 acre farm here, and this is a plan and it, you know, works well for us. And you're probably, you know, some of you may be saying, well, I don't, you know, I'm not that big and I don't have that big of a garden. Like this isn't for me. And that's not necessarily true. You can use the same model on any scale. Like you can break up, I don't know if you included those slides, but that I shared with you, Rosebud, but like, it doesn't matter. The short of it is like, I have maybe I'll share with the resources after the fact when I send out emails to you guys all with all the resources we are going to be talking about here tonight. But the short of it is, you know, you could break this down into 5 raised beds and break each raised bed into 4 sections and call that, you know, bed, you know, your first raised bed is bed A, and there's rows, you know, 1 through 4, or, you know, and so on and so forth. So it's there's a lot of ways to, you know, use this on any scale. It's just, you know, it's a really useful resource, just a lot of squares, right? There was a question, do you have a class to make spreadsheets? No, not exactly, but if you are working on a farm plan and you need a little, you know, a little tutorial on some of the, you know, some of the features, I'm sure we could probably walk you through that with maybe with a Zoom meeting or something. So, basically, I think we will be able to share some of these as templates. And you can kind of interpret this into, you know, handwritten style plans as well. It doesn't have, I mean, there's some advantages to the digital too, but you know, some people just do it on the handwritten scale.
Cool. All right. So if you don't have any more questions about that. Yeah. So this is when we talk about raised beds, we call it the kitchen garden. That's the name it has at the farm. But you can see the succession here and the crop rotation that we were working with. So these beds were turned over 3 times.
And then I'm sorry, before are the harvest projections on there, would that be useful to share at all, or?
Yeah. All right. So we're talking beets in field 6, in bed 4, in March. We have the variety of beets that we put in there. We're planting in 4 rows, and each row is 75 feet long. The seed distance is 5 inches.
I think that looks right. Yeah.
Okay, 5 inches. Number of seeds needed for that was 720. We did not do any starter flats because beets can get direct seeded. We did seed germination buffer, 936 feet. A total of 300 feet. And then our potential yield is 90 pounds. And then if you wanted to go a step further, you can price point them, so you know how much you're going to end up making from that specific bed. So 90 pounds at $4 a pound, $360 for 1 row of beets.
And I also want to just take I think this is really great. I'm glad we're actually spending a little time on this slide, on this tab. And just to, you know, run the lines here. So we've been using some terminology. Okay. So we talked about fields. So field is like the section of the farm. And in some cases, you know, some people might be just dealing with beds, right? Because they have just, you know, a smaller area that they're growing in. And, you know, it's, I guess, neither here nor there how you label it, as long as you know what you're talking about. But in our terminology, we're talking about field is the big area. And then there is beds. So there's 10 beds there, or 10 rows, beds / rows, beds or rows. And then in each, or am I doing that wrong? No, so there's beds. I'm sorry, I'm doing that wrong. So there's beds, and then inside of a bed is rows. That's what I was trying to get here. The point I was trying to get across here. So in this case, in this sample, there are how many rows? It's bed for, wait, how many rows? Seed distance, does it say how many row? There's row feet.
This one, yeah, so field 6, bed 4, there's just one row of beets. I think that's how it works. Nope,
That doesn't seem right.
No, that's
Number of rows, length of row, seed distance, row.
so
feet.
there's 4 rows in, yeah. So
Number of rows, there it
in-
is. There it is.
Yep, 4 rows. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So within
you
your,
had the
yep.
Okay. So yeah, so basically you're not going to just do one single row down the middle of a bed. If you have a 4-foot, if you have a 3 or 4 foot wide bed, you're going to do 3 or 4 rows based on the spacing needs. So that's just like, I just made it really confusing. I'm sure I'm trying to get it simplified. Basically, let's just review. There's the bed, which is in our case, I think ours are 30 inches or 36 inches or something like that. And that's 75 feet long. So, and then in that bed, we know that we could fit approximately, in this case, we're saying 4 rows of beets. If it was something like kale or collards or something, maybe it'd be 2 rows because those plants get much bigger. And so those are just, I think that you need to drill that down. And I think that, again, this is a really useful tool because of that last row, with your projections, pending you can sell it all, you can start to think about, okay, how much money can I actually make off of my farm? And so you start to play around with the map part, and then, okay, that gives you some of the visuals, and then you start to crunch the numbers on a sheet like this. Okay. Thanks for taking more time on that slide.
No, no problem. Yeah, I mean, I can just go through the other tabs here just so people can see what we're working with. Set our goals. KGD farm sales, a 6-member CSA, biweekly pickups. We break down the value of the box. We are doing 26 to 28 Saturday markets. We're beginning in June. We have our online farm store. We're, hoping to, aim 20 to 30 orders per week on our online store. Youth boxes in July, 60-member Thanksgiving share. Projecting $15,000 in GID and, farm total produce for honey and herbs. This is not including natives. And then averaging $400 in weekly sales at the center. And then projecting total market sales, $8,000. And I think we did way more than that last year. So, yeah, we talked about our KGD map, what that looks like. This is our farm field rotation. So last year, 2020, this is what field 1 looked like. Field 1 is gonna the next season will be our quick roots, so like our turnips and our radishes, beets and carrots, and then the summer it'll get turned over again, and then it'll still be beets and carrots, but just switch the beds or the rows that they were in. Talked about, this is our planting overview with the field. Our planting overview with the weeks. We talked about our harvest projections. This is what our seeding schedule looks like. Pretty similar to the other harvest projection. Our planting dashboard. This one is a little harder to read, but still months at the top. And then our different fields that we're working with and what's happening from month to month. We have something in here for our seed needs. This is literally every crop and variety that we're growing on the farm, and how much we'll need through the season. We have a whole space on garlic. And then just another field spacing, what this could look like. 30 beds, 30 beds of, beds that are 30 feet. We have 10 of those, so that's 300 feet. That's how he's breaking that down. We have 18-inch pathways, and that was changed. Like I mentioned earlier, we changed that last year because we have big feet and it was really uncomfortable to walk through there. All right. So if there's not any more questions about that, I'm going to move on.
There is one question.
Okay.
Are all the fields annuals, and any perennial, like, do you if you do have perennials, is there mapping of the perennial stuff?
There is, and I don't know if you can actually see it. So all of the fields from 1 to 7, those are all annuals. And then if you're familiar with the farm, then let's go back to the kitchen garden. So we did have some rhubarb and asparagus out there. And I believe they're kind of in field 3 here. Those are still, they're still waiting for them to come up. So those are there. And then if you see here where the raised beds are, if you can follow my cursor here, this whole area are all like native perennials here, and then here. This little triangle space has all of our herbs in there. And then there's more borders here with like native perennials. But other than like the asparagus and the rhubarb, those are the only perennials that are actually in the rows, in the beds. Does that answer your question?
Answers a little bit. Thank you for that. But about strawberries, raspberries, plants of that nature, if you do have perennials, because I was worried about the crop rotation, and that's why I was asking about that.
Yeah. So thank you for saying that. So we do have a row of blackberries here. So this is by field 4 that I'm looking at. This is also the fence line, and there is a row of blackberries that grow there. And then I'm going to go back to because we do have strawberries, and I believe those are in field 4. Field 5. So if you focus here on the field 5 area, this says strawberries, rhubarb, and asparagus. That's also the area. So those won't move, and they'll stay there.
So yeah, essentially you're like taking those out of the rotation. If it's a perennial, we set those up, and I think there was some kind of intentionality about the area that they were placed in, but those are static, clearly.
Yeah. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right.
There also was a question about crop rotation. Maybe we'll I don't know if we're going to get into details on crop rotation. Rosebud, were you planning on talking about crop rotation?
Not a ton.
Okay. let's just hold that to the end. I'm gonna make a note. We could probably, if we have time, we could definitely, maybe spend a few minutes on that.
Mhm, mhm. Okay, so we're moving along in our steps here. We've talked about what seeds, what rotation is going to look like, what our harvest schedule is going to look like. And now we just need to think about plugging that into our space and what that works. We have all these like great big dreams, and now we have to like plug them into the space. So if you're in a backyard, this is probably what your backyard is going to look like. This is a really great example. She's got a couple raised beds here. She's got a space designated for her animal, for her dog that lives there. So she has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different spaces. And assuming that these are all annual spaces and there's no perennials in anywhere, all 5 of these fields or spaces will be rotated. So if you grow carrots here in this long bed one season, or at one point, you would then move it over to the next space the following season, and then whatever, just kind of rotating it around. And it really just depends on what your space looks like and what you're growing. But that's just another resource that we have. I'm sorry, my dog is whining. Sorry if you can hear that. All right.
It's all right, baby.
Wants her mom's attention. Okay. All right. So another, I wanted to share this picture. This is the farm up north. This is specifically my Three Sisters area that I plotted out. I have corn growing and beans growing and our squash growing here. This is what another site layout would look like, another map would look like. This is the Michigan State Stewart Organic Farm in Lansing. And this is just, this is a really, really great example of what a really nice map looks like. Really, really detailed. They've got a key on the bottom. They have all of their fields named. They have your, hoop houses up there, a compost area, your workhouse. So this is a really, really nice map of what, of their farm.
And you'll notice, like, we're talking about a couple different, like, some extremes of scale in the situation, right? So this is like roughly 10 acres in this map, and then the one from a few slides ago was a backyard. And so you can, these all translate into the different, basically the baseline is the map, and then you build off of the map for the additional steps that we've been talking about here.
Cool. Any questions about maps? And I'm sure there's a million tools out there if you Googled them. Okay, so now that you know what to grow when, how will it grow? What happens after it's grown? And I just wanted to take a little time and talk about that part. And this is, again, speaks to more record keeping and keeping track of what's going on. We talk about enterprise budgets. The sustainable vegetable production from startup to market is a really great resource if you want to get a hold of that book. This one suggests, having a crop journal, record the amount of work done on each crop every day. We're all farmers. Our time is our money. If we're spending, crazy amount of time in our strawberry fields, you know, that makes sense because, you know, strawberries are, you know, can be priced a little higher because of the work that goes into growing them. So thinking about that kind of stuff, you want to keep track of your bed prep and your cultivating, your planting and mulching and staking, even weeding. I think that that is another thing that should get added into what you're doing, you know, keeping track of. Oops. Okay. You want to record at each harvest, you know, a weight or count of what you're doing. So if you're, you know, making 1 pound bunches of carrots, keeping track of that. If you're harvesting, you know, 10 pounds of tomatoes, keep track of that. If you're counting your squash that you're harvesting, keeping track of that. So it just depends on how you want to track it. You know, the time spent harvesting it and cleaning it, that's a big that's a big part, because you want to know how much labor is going in that and how much, you know, how much you're paying your workers, you know, if you have workers. And then again, money raised from each crop. So if you know, think back to that one spreadsheet I showed you, we broke it down, you know, how many beets you can actually yield from this space and how much money you can make from that. You know, and then at the end of the season, add up the total time for each crop. You want to divide the income from that crop by the time you spent on it. Divide the income for that crop by the area or number of beds. And then this suggestion here is just to aim for, you know, $400 per 100-foot bed per season. And the range could be anywhere from $100 to $1,000, depending on the crop. Do you have any questions about that? No?
So, yeah, I mean, just like the you know, the big picture of the enterprise budget is trying to calculate all the time and energy you're putting into this stuff, and like, what are you actually making? You know, how if you spent so many hours weeding and thinning those onions, was it really worth the time you spent?
Right. Exactly. Okay. I'm going to go forward. Okay, some more, you know, more record keeping, standard operating procedures or SOPs. You know, SOPs are a written record of a process that takes place on your farm. And this is some examples: hand washing, watering, planting, weeding, tool cleaning and storage, harvest process, and produce storage. I mean, and these are all things, especially if you have a market garden, these are all things that you should have, especially if you're going to have folks coming out to help you. It saves you time. It's easy to train new people, and improves the farm flow. You know, you don't want to, you know, be, you know, constantly reminding people like how to harvest carrots all the time, because that also takes a long time. Having things posted is really helpful. You know, having a binder of your written SOPs handy for folks, having things, you know, signs, whatever works for your space. But you know, the more information, the better, especially if you've got farm workers on your team. And then, you know, we have to mention farm food safety. Just did a pretty intensive training last week, so it's very fresh in my brain. And, you know, having a farm food safety plan is super important. You know, it refers to, you know, to what you do to make sure that your food is grown, you know, in a healthy way, to, you know, and that's safely to be, you know, safely eaten. You know, things to include in your plan. And, you know, these are things that I think we're going to have a resource list, or this is going to be on your resource on the bottom.
Rosebud, you there?
To store these things. You know, your greens are going to get stored in a cool place, you know, in your cooler. Your tomatoes aren't going to get stored in your cooler. So, you know, having a plan for that. How often do I wash my hands? And tools when I work? Where do I keep my records? Those are all things that should go in your farm food safety plan.
Hey, Rosebud.
Yeah.
You just cut out for about 15 seconds. I'm not sure if that was just me or but it's okay. I think you're good now. I just wanted to like just make it sure that would, you know, I don't know what happened. That was
I
just
don't know. My internet is probably like, it's too late. Turn it off now. It's time to go.
You sound great. So okay.
Okay. Good. Yeah. So I'm sorry if I cut off. You know, just to reiterate, having the farm food safety plan is super important. You know, keep your workers safe, keep yourself safe, and keep your consumers safe. That's, you know, first and foremost. Hand washing, I want to like drill that. That's so important. Keeping things, you know, clean and sanitary is really, really important, especially, you know, especially if you're a market grower, market gardener, and you're, you know, you're dealing with people, you know, feeding people. You wanna have good clean produce and good clean procedures. So, any questions before I move on?
I do have a question.
Okay.
I'm in Washtenaw County, and for myself, I took a food handler's certification just to be on the safe side. Is that something that is offered in Wayne County, that just in case if someone wants to take the certification, so that way it takes that extra step to being certified or being safe?
Yeah. So through the Produce Safety Alliance, through Cornell University, they have a training, and sometimes that's given through the MSU Extension as well. That's something that it's probably in addition. It would be a really great addition to the training you've already done, but those resources are definitely out there. And I mean, you know, it's a lot of, they get into way more than just hand washing. They talk about soil amendments. They talk about, you know, how to make your own plan. And, you know, a lot, you know, our scale of farming is very different than the rest of the country. You know, a lot of that training has, you know, it all talks about poop all the time. not avoiding, you know, cross-contamination. And I definitely think that it would be a really great thing to put yourself through if that's an option for you. So it's called Produce Safety Alliance. You should and that'll be in a part of the resources on when we share those. Okay. All right, so before we break into the case study in the last part of this class, is there any lasting questions or anything that that we want to talk about before we move into this? Okay, so we wanted to do a little case study and share what Ambassador Fridge Farm does. So Ambassador Fridge Farm is owned by Molly, who is our market manager here at Keeper in Detroit. She does all kinds of things. She's amazing. She is a market garden. So she is a GRP member and is a market garden. She is also the City Commons Collective member and a GID member. She does CSA production and grows for market. She has one high tunnel that's 72 by 30. You can see that in the picture there to the right. 8 raised beds, and she's operating on less than an acre. She has estimated 2 people, 20 hours a week, each of them. She has a walk-in cooler and city water supply and lots of hungry neighbors. So she, has identified where she's selling, identified what space she's growing in, how much labor she's going to need, what her resources are. So she's got a cooler and a high tunnel and raised beds and city water. And she has a few different markets. She's going to grow for GID, she's going to grow for City Commons, and she's going to grow for her neighbors. All right. Okay, so she did break down her steps here as well. Step 1 for her was she set some goals. Her personal goal was to, have a farm patio. Her farm and patio should be a happy place and not to overcommit to herself. She's estimating 20 hours a week with, we'll need lots of automation. So that means like something that's kind of like set it and forget it, right? And she's estimating her sales goal to be between $5,000 and $10,000, and to cover cost of production and her growth. So step 2, she chose her markets. She's going to sell to the City Commons CSA between June and November, and she's going to do the GID Saturday market between August and November. She chose her crops. She kept things super simple. So she said that, she needs lots of automation and she doesn't want to overcommit. So she chose carrots and heirloom tomatoes and peppers. So if you've grown all 3 of those and you know that they're, kind of easy, that, kind of carrots do their things, tomatoes do their things, peppers do their things, not a lot of extra work there, right? Not a lot of attention. So you notice she's going to need her carrots for June and September. And her heirloom tomatoes and peppers are going to be spread out between August and November. All right. So talking about step 4 and setting harvest amounts. Her plan is for spring, in the springtime, she wants to do carrots, 25 units a week for 4 weeks for the CSA. And so she's got that marked down. In June, she's going to need 150 pounds of carrots. For, and each unit is broken down to 1.5 pounds. And then she'll need another 150 pounds in September. So you see how she's got that written down there. She's step 5 and 6. She's setting her planting schedule. She selected her crops. So she wants to do carrots. She picked her seed of choice from Johnny's. That's her, that's going to be her crop. Her days to maturity, she's got there written for 70 days. So her first crop is seeded by March 25th to be harvested in June. Her second crop is going to get seeded in June after that first succession goes. She's going to put in another set of carrots to be harvested in September. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. Okay. We talked about creating a map. This is what her beds look like. She's got a 35-foot bed that extends this long. And then she has 3 rows within that bed of where she will plant the carrots. And she's got 2 beds dedicated that are 100 feet long. Any questions?
Looking good.
All right. Okay, so she's now, she's now into step 7 and 8, reviewing. Should she add a margin? Should she, increase what she's growing? Is she going to have enough? Like we said, her first crop was seeded on March 25th and harvested in June. And then again, her second crop was seeded on June 25th and then harvested in September. She's got her, first and second plantings there, 2 different beds. Her how much she's sowing and the seed spacing that she's going to need. It's looking pretty good to me. All right. Let me move on to record keeping. Your spreadsheet is your record. That's, that's like what you always refer back to. That's something to keep in mind. You can print off copies and use it to take notes. Especially like your actual seeding date. Like if you plan to seed on March 25th, but it stormed for 5 days. And so you had to go back the next week, and wait for all the water to drain. So then, you put in your actual date. So that will, kind of reset things for you. You have a better idea of when, when things will be ready. So if you're saying here you planted on March 25th, but really you didn't plant until like another week later, you're a whole week behind. And if you don't have that tracked and you don't have that noted somewhere, by the time June comes and you're expecting carrots on June 3rd and they're not ready, they're looking puny, you're gonna see where you made the mistake. So other things to keep track of are, your pests and diseases and crop losses. That will happen. Your watering schedule. You should definitely have a watering schedule unless you're, dry farming and you're just depending on the rain. But you should definitely keep track of that, especially if you're dry farming. You want to keep track of when it's raining. You want to do a crop taste and quality. You want to make sure things are going good under there. Soil care and adding amendments. Adding compost is what we're all doing. That's most important. All right. Any questions?
Still doing good.
Okay. So that's Molly's farm. That's what she does. So we do have any questions. Now's the time to ask them. We do have our resources here. We have a couple links for farm management tools, open source or free. We have lightfarm.org, cogpro.com, our garden planner, .motherearthnews.com. I think I've used that one before, and that one's pretty good. More farm management tools. These are subscriptions, Veggie Tables, Tend.com, and Ag Squared are other subscriptions that you can pay for. I mentioned some other resources. The KG or the farm food safety one pagers in there. It's linked there. Also our produce list, hand washing signs in both English and Spanish, and our SOP for hand washing SOP for harvesting. Oops. So I'm going to stop there. We do have some time left. So if we have any questions or any thoughts that have come up, now's the time to have some open discussion.
Yeah, so feel free to come off mute if you want to kind of open up for conversation. We did cover a lot of different things. I'm wondering if we could go back to either the cycle or the list just to kind of to jog memory about what we kind of covered today. Kiana, you want to go ahead and
Yeah, thank you so much for all this information. I really appreciate it. So I am growing on my land for the first time. And I had a question about bed preparation. So through my research, I wanted to go the no-till route. But I have also read that if you're farming on land for the first time, it could be beneficial to, till once and then, keep it minimal after that. So can you speak to that at all?
Yeah.
you want to take that, Rosebud, or you want me to take it?
I mean, I can take it and you can add in.
Okay.
Yeah, I echo that recommendation for sure. If you have not grown on that space before, I would definitely first get your soil tested if you haven't done that yet. If you're in Detroit, you should become a member of the Garden Resource Program. Really great resources there, especially for getting your soil tested. But yeah, that's initially that's things I've done in the past as well. In a new space, get in there, till it, and then next the following seasons I don't. I've only ever done that a couple times in the spaces that I've grown in. I mean, I also would, if you haven't mapped out your space yet, I mean, you can't really do it right now, but when the snow melts, I recommend mapping out the area that you're going to be in, and maybe like some people will put like weed barrier or cardboard or something down to help kill some of those weeds. But if you haven't gotten your soil tested, I highly recommend you doing that before you till. Do you have anything else, Keto?
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm sure, sounds like you're doing your research. So there's a few good resources out there for in terms of books, like for no-till stuff. And you can see in the chat, Parker's talking about sheet mulching. So some, whether that be sheet mulching is basically layering the whole areas along the lines of what Rosebud was saying too, with the cardboard, killing all the grass with layers of stuff. Some people will, so, a soil test is going to help you with, figuring out first and foremost the safety, and then secondarily what your nutrient analysis is, like how is the soil, what's particularly what's the organic matter percentage, and then of the other minerals that are present, like kind of the baseline NPK, are they are those in reasonable amounts, and does the soil look workable? And if it's really compacted, then you might need to do some more work, bring in compost. But sheet mulching, I started to talk about, is essentially layering leaves and compost and soil on top of the beds to slowly decay, and you can smother grass that way. So the downs, in that lasagna method is similar, same concept. The downside of that is you have to give it time to kill the grass, and you can't grow in it right away. So particularly if you're anxious to kind of get things growing, you're going to want to till to get started. But so many things, it's you'll learn a lot by just starting down the path of doing the tilling first and assessing the soil, and then seeing how things went in that first planting, and deciding if you need to do it again the next year based on how things went in that first season.
Yeah, I'd also be really aware of the different weeds that are growing in your backyard, especially if you're going to turn that into a growing space, because some are really invasive, and could get if you're tilling, it's going to be harder to manage those weeds if you're not aware of what's up. That
Um,
makes sense.
yeah, that's great. Takunia?
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. The first question is there a reliable compost community that's in Detroit that if everyone networked together, they can order compost and keep the price down lower if possible? Because I know if you buy individually, the price is high. So I was wondering about that for the first one. And for the second one, my question is that if you was to sell at the market, do you have to take that logo or that GID, grown in Detroit? Does it have to be grown in Detroit, or can it be where I'm from in Washtenaw County and I want to sell at the Eastern Market? Is that liable? And can I take produce that I'm growing in Detroit and sell it in Washtenaw County?
So I'm going to answer your second question first. So the Grown in Detroit program is only for folks who are growing in the city and members of the Garden Resource Program to be able to sell. So if you have land here and you're growing here, you can sell the produce at the Eastern Market. And I mean, in terms of growing it in Detroit and selling it in Washtenaw County, like that's that's kind of up to you. And then in terms of compost, so I mean, Parker, who is on the call today, is doing a community, or basically they're over at Sanctuary Farms on the east side of Detroit. They're attempting to like do a composting operation to make some really nice quality compost. I'm not really sure, it takes a lot of time and energy, and maybe Parker can, if you want to come off mute or drop in the chat about how you guys are thinking about selling that. But they're like, I think if people are trying to make a business of it, you have to make ends meet. So I'm not quite sure what their model is for that purpose. We do, try and help folks access. Usually if you can get, if you're looking for volume, that's the best way to kind of get better pricing on compost. So some people are doing like a train where it's like, I think it's like 40 or 50 yards in a trailer, and there's, you're getting one or two of those, and you can get it, so there's some options there. There's a whole another conversation about quality of compost. Like compost has become much more in demand. I think since the pandemic, a lot of the regional suppliers have been, can't make it quick enough. So, which ultimately means that the quality of what you're getting is not always quite finished. But yeah, I mean, wouldn't it be great if we could, aggregate for volume? I mean, we do have, for the Garden Resource Program members, we do have as a resource for the membership, folks can come to one of our resource centers and pick up for a family garden. I think it's like a half a yard, and for a community garden or a market garden, it's like 2 yards or something like that. I'm not sure what the numbers are this year, but we have sites where you can pick up compost for free one time a year as part of the membership.
And if I might say, Keto, yeah, we do have compost. We grow, all the stuff we grow on our farm, we grow it with the compost that we make, and we've gotten to a point where we do have a surplus of compost. So we're selling it for pretty cheap, $20 a yard. That's the cheapest compost you'll find in all of Metro Detroit. But it is sort of more like a compost mulch. We don't have a screener, so it's not going to be as kind of those fine particles and stuff which you would get at most landscape yards. But we've tested the nutrition, has really good nutrition, and like Keto said too, we've experienced. For example, we got compost when we first started out like 3 years ago. We got a big shipment of compost from Sakura, and it was horrible. I mean, we were pulling weed seeds out of it for 2 years. And we've proven that we can generate compost. We're getting the temperatures up above 140 degrees, which not only kills the pathogens, but kills the weed seeds in it too. So I'll put my email in the chat. And if you are looking for more affordable compost, you can come pick it up yourself, or we even could do some deliveries too for an extra fee.
Kind of concerned with getting compost, because we have gotten compost from 3 different suppliers, and 2 out of the 3 had a high amount of Canadian thistle in it, and we're still taking out Canadian thistle continuously.
Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that.
That's rough.
Okay, any other questions? What's on people's minds?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
So I'm having a really hard time understanding the results of my soil test.
Okay.
I went over the information on the website on how to read it, but I'm still not understanding. Am I in the good number zone? Am I not in the good number zone? I'm not sure.
Okay. And this is a test you got through us?
Yes.
Okay. And it might be easier for either myself or one of our staff to like actually do a one-on-one with you, because I mean, it would be good to actually look at it. And I don't know if we really have the kind of platform to do that tonight.
Okay.
If you want to drop me a line, I can either myself or one of our garden development staff can definitely help you with that.
Okay.
And I'll just drop my email in the chat again.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Nice to hear from you, Althea.
Hi, it's nice to see you. You know I'm ready and waiting to get started.
I know. Me too.
Yay. Yeah. I mean, don't we all want to be out in the warm sun right now?
Yeah.
Growing.
Another question, please.
Okay.
I know that Detroit has, and the residents have different type of issues with acquiring water and having a good water rate. So for us to have land in Detroit, what's the best way of acquiring a good way of getting water and it won't be wasteful? And also if the water lines can be turned off during the winter months, so that way the lines won't freeze, if that makes a good question.
Yeah. Great question. Unfortunately, I don't have a great answer. This is something that we are actively trying to address. So, basically, and I'm jumping here, Rose, but this seems like a little bit more my, since I'm working on some of the projects I'm working on. So I mean, an obvious answer would be like, hey city, can we meter our hydrant and access water that way? And so they do actually have a community permit to use hydrants, but it's more for really intended for construction projects or occasionally for like public events. But so we tried talking to them about, would you give gardens, one of these permits? And they said no, but we're still pursuing that, trying to like reason with them on why that would be important. The other avenues we're exploring. So basically there are, there's probably a couple, a dozen or more sites that have gotten frost-free hydrants installed. So it's basically tapping into the city line, a water line that goes 4 feet down. So it's below the frost line. And that carries a reasonably hefty bill of, between permits and plumbers and backhoes of, at the best numbers we've seen are around $6,000 to get an install like that. And there's, there's ways to do it where you blow the line out at the end of the year, and then there's ways to do it where you don't need to blow the line out. Like if the hydrant itself, the main is below the frost line, then it shouldn't be an issue. So we're actually doing, we're in the process, it's one of our projects for this year is to find contractors that are willing to do the work, because a lot of the plumbers are just like it's not their favorite project, so it's hard to nail people down, or they charge exorbitant amounts of money. So we're actively doing some research on that. We also have a program around rainwater collection, which definitely helps address water needs, but it doesn't address all your needs. Like, we had a really dry fall last year, and rainwater collection wasn't doing people much good, but it definitely helps, doing basically setting up a system where you're either capturing rainwater off of an existing roof, or you're building a structure, which we have some designs for a freestanding structure for rainwater collection on our website that we think is helpful and useful.
I'm glad you brought that up, because my next question is there a way that we can partner with the schools and collect the rainwater from the schools, local schools in Detroit, and that way we can rain harvest that way. So that way it can help other farmers that are close proximity to those areas to harvest.
It's not a bad idea. I just think that there's a lot of logistics involved, right? Like, how are you going to move that water? So yeah, I mean, like that, I was just talking to somebody today about, wouldn't it be cool if we had a kind of a farmer water delivery system where it was like somebody had a trailer with a couple of those 275 gallon totes, and you pay a fee and you can get a delivery of water. Like, wouldn't that, something like that. Another thing that some people have done, if you can try and make a relationship with your local fire department, and they, I've heard there's several gardens I've talked to who've, made a connection and, traded tomatoes for them to come over and fill up their tanks every now and again, to have water for their gardens. Okay. Anything else? How's everybody doing? You guys ready to go put together your farm plans? It was a lot of information. I think, we want to be a resource, and it's really hard to cover all this information in 2 hours. And sometimes it's like, just let it go in one ear and out the other, and, absorb what you can. But in the end, we want you to be successful. So if you are working, we as Rosebud was like expressing at the beginning, we really want you to we really think this is a valuable tool. Like, if you want to make a business out of farming, I would say this is essential to do this kind of farm planning. And if you're working through it and you have questions, or you need a little bit of help on like how to do this or how to do that, or feel free to reach out, please. And we can do, also, if you're growing in Detroit, consider getting involved with Grown in Detroit, as we've chatted and referenced about a little bit through the session today. So before we wrap things up, I just want to say, these classes that we do through Keep Growing Detroit are free, but we would always encourage folks to, if you can, give back in some way. That could be donating, that could be volunteering, that could be shopping with Grown in Detroit. We have a wish list on our website, so there are ways to, like, even if you want to give a few bucks, great. If you don't feel obliged, we're just putting it out there. And there's lots of opportunities to volunteer. We'll also have this summer, we're going to have some opportunities to volunteer at gardens around the city. So, help out other growers. just like you. So check that stuff out. There's a QR code that goes directly to some of the opportunities. And if you want to volunteer, there's some more information on our website. So you can check that out if you'd like. And with that, I would like to say thanks so much, Rosebud. You did a great job tonight. We really appreciate it. Great to have everybody out this evening. And then, if feel free to reach out to Rosebud and myself with questions, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.